Yo, everybody. Welcome to Off Panel, a weekly interview podcast about all things comics, brought to you by Sketch.com. I'm your host, David Harper, and this week's guest is the co-owner of Chicago's Eisner-winning comic shop, Challengers Comics and Conversation. It's Patrick Brower. Thanks for coming on, Patrick.
David, it's my pleasure. I'm very happy to be back. I looked back on the past year and thought, the world's going to end, and I'm never going to get to talk to David on Off Panel again. And little did I know it's going to work. We're here.
We did it. Fifth straight year? I think it's the fifth straight year we did in January, basically.
Nice.
Yeah, I mean, you came on really early, but I think every single year besides that, we've done it in January, which is, it's just funny. It's like the new year hits, and I'm like, time to reach out to Patrick. So let's start with a very fundamental question of all of this. Even beyond comics, you had a very interesting year. You had, a leg injury that carried with you for the bulk of the year, I think, basically. How are you doing, and how is the leg?
I'm fine. I'm not like this stoic person of nothing gets me down. But honestly, I never let any of the events of last year bother me. And there were a lot, but I never wanted to dwell on the negativity. My leg injury was caused during the pandemic at work while trying to film stupid little minute-long Instagram videos to keep people entertained while there were no new comics coming out. And there was an accident involving a life-size Teenage Ninja Turtles and metal hooks. And the end result of that is I have some permanent leg damage. Some permanent nerve damage, a whole buildup of scar tissue, and I don't walk the same anymore. But it could have been so much worse.
Yeah,
it was a split second accident, a freak accident that caused this. And sure, I wish it didn't happen. And sure, there were times I'm like, man, I can't believe this one stupid stunt is changing my life forever. But yeah, it could have changed it so much worse. So fine. It's fine.
Patrick, you're talking to a person who broke his arm when he was 4 years old, bouncing on his parents' bed to the Simon and Simon theme song. And the doctor did not set the bone right. So I have a permanently dislocated right arm. And, I've thought back on that a million times. I'm like, I was cursed by Simon and Simon. That is one of those moments. So those things happen, but you're back working at the shop, right?
Oh yeah, no, I have been. The accident happened May 6th. I came back in June, and then it got bad, and I had a staph infection, and I needed surgery in September, and then I was back in October.
See, this is why people have to shop at Challengers, is you literally give your body up for comics.
I kind of did.
Yeah.
I mean, all of the dumbest injuries, and the older I get, the more surgeries and hits I've had, they've all been caused by comics retail. 100%. Yeah.
It's like most dangerous professions. It's like, I'm trying to think of like firefighter, I don't know.
Snake charmer,
zoo wrangler, and then comic book shop owner.
Comics retail.
There we go. Who knew? Those metal hooks, man.
These are all dumb things of my own doing. So I like to think that I know better now and won't be doing those things. But just today, I was on top of a very tall ladder holding a vacuum cleaner so I could vacuum off annoying cobwebs that are at the top of our 15-foot ceiling.
That's so dangerous.
I'm not learning. I'm not. If I did learn, David, maybe I wouldn't be in comics retail. Who knows?
Well, let's talk about the year specifically for Challengers. I know that it was fundamentally like we started the year. I don't remember when Blue closed, but you started the year with two shops, right?
Yes, we started the year with two shops. At the end of last year, the very end of November of 2019, we opened. Oh, I said last year. I meant 2 years ago now. Whoops. It's new year. At the end of 2019, we opened our second location, and it closed basically after the citywide shutdown in Chicago in March, at the end of March of this year, because of the pandemic. It never reopened.
Mm-hmm.
It was a combination of people. It was a very business heavy part of town. So the majority of the customers that we had, the few customers we had earned at that new store, were people who worked in that part of town. And then that all dried up immediately because everybody started working from home because of the pandemic.
Right.
So even before the shutdown, we knew things were in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was severe rioting and looting, and that store got looted 6 times in one night on May 30th to May 31st. And it was a curfew. Like, we were not allowed to go to the store. So once it got broken into the first time, they smashed through the front window, not even the door, the window to get in.
Mm-hmm.
So it was vulnerable all night because we were not allowed to go to it, because if you were seen on the streets, you, in theory, were to be arrested. And of course, it's the kind of thing that, had we gone to the store to try to mitigate damage, of course, we would be the ones who got pulled over.
Right.
You know, that's just how it works. So that store was left vulnerable all night, and the police were called immediately, never showed, but, you know, the city was on fire.
Right.
So it wasn't just that it was looted, it was that each progressive group of people did a lot more damage. And, you know, David, you've seen photos of our big metal bookshelves,
Mm-hmm.
and they're great and they're sturdy. And the ones that we've been using at the main location, we've had for just about 13 years now, and they're great. But when they're full of books and you knock them over, they bend in places they're not supposed to, and they're irreparably damaged. So people just started doing that kind of damage. Like, it wasn't even about stealing, it was about destruction.
Wow.
So it wasn't just like, oh, we got, you know, stuff was stolen. No, the store was destroyed.
Wow.
Like, we were incapable. We would need to have gotten all new fixtures to start over again. And like, people were just, we had like restock boxes behind the counter. They were just grabbing full boxes and running out. I know this because I got to watch it all as it was happening on the security cameras.
Oh no, that makes it worse.
A little disheartening. Yeah. What makes it even more worse, personally, that was the night my mom died.
Oh, geez.
So she died that afternoon, and then the store got looted 6 times that night.
Oh boy. Yeah.
So not a great day for my 2020.
No. No.
So, and then even after that, we weren't convinced the store was done. But then after my injury, it's like, I can't even get there. So it's like, it's done. It has to go away.
Yeah. Well, and I, like, you know, I'm not going to say that like it's a good thing that Blue closed or anything like that, but I have to wonder if in some ways, like, closing Blue early before, before you tried to like limp it along throughout the year, whether or not that was almost like a blessing in disguise, because like trying to get through this year, managing 2 shops with one of them where, you know, you obviously had a lot of problems going with it, that might have tanked both shops. I don't know.
Yeah, well, here's the negative part of all of this. Blue is closed. It's not officially gone.
Oh, so you're still paying rent?
Yeah, so we had just signed a 5-year lease. You know, we were only like 3 months into it, 4 months into it at the time this all happened. And we assumed that landlord would be understanding with the state of the world, and we figured, man, there's no way anybody can expect business to stay just to still honor these things. But as numerous, and dare I say hundreds of businesses, maybe even thousands in the Chicago area have found out, oh no, they all did. And we had to involve attorneys, and there was a lot of back and forth, and none of this, like, I hate dealing with attorneys to begin with, just because when you're doing it, it's because you have to.
Right.
And it's usually for bad things. So like, everything is resolved, but we're still paying that store for, not quite a year. So we got, 3.5 years knocked off, and we got the rent reduced, but we're still paying for it.
Right. But you're not ordering inventory for it that you're not selling.
And we kept our Diamond account active because we didn't want to screw them as well. We didn't want to say, hey, here's all the stuff that we ordered, forget it, and so we absorbed all of that stuff. And to this day, things are still trickling in that we ordered, way earlier in the year or at the end of last year. Things are still slowly every couple weeks. It's like, oh, two more graphic novels are coming in this week for Blue.
Hmm.
So Red just absorbed all of that.
Here
But
comes
so
your order for
there's
Black Panther 23 in like 3 months.
exactly. Yeah, no, for real. That's exactly what it's like.
Yeah.
This last week it was Phoebe and Her Unicorn Volume 11.
There you go.
Things like that. So so we're still paying rent there. We still have to pay insurance, legally have to pay insurance on it. So that is an annoying cost. We did cancel the security system, but that is like, oh, you signed a contract for a year and a half. Like, well, too bad there's no store, so there has to be discussions with everybody as to letting us out of contracts and things like that.
It's like you're getting a divorce, except for it's like
Yeah,
somehow more complicated.
Yeah. So no matter how the sales are in Red, good or bad for the next, half a year or longer, we are still paying for the mistakes of Blue
Right.
out of the money Red makes.
Yeah. Well, so, okay, let's focus on Red from here on out, just because it's like the one shop that was like fully going.
There is only one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, how was the year for the shop? I obviously there was a lot of complications. Obviously, had to change a lot of things. But now that we're in January 2021, how did it shape up?
It was okay. I mean, on paper, it's our worst year since 2013.
Mm-hmm.
But honestly, that's to be expected. It's interesting to say things like that, but then also say we were down 12% from 2019.
Right.
And while 12% can be, over $100,000, it's 12%. It's not terrible.
Right.
And we were down a lot more earlier in the year, but the back half of the year brought it all back. Like we gained so much more ground. And I've heard this from other retailers as well. Inexplicably, sales have been insane, especially on Wednesdays. Our Wednesdays are double what they used to be.
Wow.
Yeah. Like all of us, and it's with technically less product.
Mm-hmm. Well, not technically. I mean, it just is.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it, but I'm worried about when this, I feel like this has to end.
Right.
And I feel like as soon as people have the ability to go to restaurants, go to movie theaters, hang out with friends, or other things they would have spent their money on that they can't, they were spending it now on comics. And I feel like that's going to go away, and we can't rely on this. So each week, this past Wednesday, which while it was the first week of the Future State books coming out, it was maybe the best Wednesday we've ever had.
Wow.
And that has nothing to do with Future State books, because those did fairly mediocre for us. But it was just this massive Wednesday for no reason we can ascertain. Looking over our numbers from last year, the best Wednesday of the year was a random, the first Wednesday in August.
Mm-hmm.
We're like, what happened that day? We looked up the new release list. Nothing.
Maybe
nothing was there.
Was it Eternals Mania this week?
No.
Just the fever for Cersei and Icarus?
Man, we only carried the main cover and the Alex Ross cover on that one. And we still have a ton of covers left. Still a ton of copies left.
Yeah, I know.
So
it's Eternals. I just had to make a joke about it because Eternals is eternally not selling. Although, I mean, if you're gonna do it, it's gonna be with Kieran Gillen and Esad Ribic. But okay. I am interested in, and you might not even have this type of thing, but you had that second half. So I'm guessing the first half was way down. I think I want to say that you told me originally, back earlier in the middle of the year, that you were down 30+% or something. So what was the second half up?
Yeah.
Wow.
That's the crazy part.
Yeah.
I mean, it would have had to have been to gain back the tens of $1,000s it dug us out of that hole.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know what the, we obviously have an entertainment void because there's only so many Netflix shows people can talk themselves into being good. And, there's a dearth of new movies and new TV shows. There was no Marvel movies last year. There's all kinds of different things. But one thing that I've been thinking about a lot, and this is probably me being hopeful, and I've been accused of that many times, is like, I wonder if if some people have like committed more to comics, or like people have gotten into comics because of this, and like if some of that is sustainable, like if like, let's say 10% of that lift continues onwards past all of this, that's still pretty good. Like that's like, if you were 10% higher on every Wednesday going forward than you were previously, like you'd probably take that.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. People keep saying like, "Oh man, this is like we're getting into that next comic boom." I'm like, I don't know that I would qualify it as that until we are out of the pandemic.
Yeah, when everything is like back to its natural order and every option is on its table, that's the only apples to apples comparison. But I will say that it, like, I think you mentioned this to me when I did my mid-year check-in. Like you were saying about basically everything is selling. Basically, like people just wanted comics, and like they were showing up on Wednesdays and they're just like, I'm just getting stuff. And
Yeah.
and I think that's interesting. I do kind of wonder whether or not like the reduction of actual releases, even if it's not you guys hand selling because social distancing and everything like that, I do wonder if like having a smaller menu became more appealing for people. And that might, I have no way to prove that that's true, but it's like interesting looking at like John Jackson Miller at Comicron writing about the fact that basically September 2019 and September 2020 were pretty close, despite the fact that there was, I think, either 20 or 25% fewer releases. And that's amazing.
Yeah, this is a theory that Dal has always had, that the fewer titles that you can put out as a company, the better they will all sell. And he used to say that if he was in charge of DC would only have 12 ongoing monthly books.
Oh, that might be too small.
Yeah, but then it's you need your killer creative teams and whatnot.
Right.
But yeah, you could do miniseries and things in his rule, but not a ton of them.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, I think that helped. I mean, a lot of it's still the lesser selling titles still sold lesser, and it's just the main comics were selling more.
So like Three Jokers and like,
I mean, it's not like it's I love Kelly Thompson, but it's not like Captain Marvel numbers skyrocketed.
Right.
Not counting the first appearance of Star or the first Empire crossover, which were, non those were outside of the norm for that book.
Right. So what was selling? Like, what was it, like anything in particular? Was it just all the high end stuff, or was there like, did the middle see lift too?
Yes to both, but mainly your core characters. People found comfort in their mainstays. Your Superman, Batman, Captain America, Spider-Man, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Immortal Hulk has always done well for us, so that picked up a little bit over time. It's just it's the smaller publishers' output that didn't see the lift that we would have hoped it would be.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't like anybody was saying, "Hey, I'm hungry for anything. I'm going to try Grundle, Kentucky from AWA." No, they still chose to ignore it. Not enough people read Ice Cream Man, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Books like Images, Getting It Together, or Inkblot just couldn't find an audience.
Mm-hmm.
It's all just your mainstream. And toward the back half of the year, obviously, Ten of Swords was a huge help. Like, it took all the other X-Men numbers up to X-Men sales numbers.
You mean like the X-Men flagship solo series?
Exactly. I explained that badly, but yeah, like, so Excalibur suddenly selling double for us,
Yeah.
And put that across the whole board. So that was a huge buoying point for us at the start of the fall.
I feel like that's one of the few times I've heard an event actually being the rising tide that lifted all ships.
Yeah, and honestly, in this situation, we don't normally sign people up like that.
What for like Ten of Swords all or something?
Yeah, exactly. But we did. Anybody who's getting X-Men, we're like, you're going to want all 22 chapters. We're putting you down for it. And we had maybe 4 people say, no, I don't want all of them. And that was it.
Mm-hmm.
I want to back up and say that during the things that we did differently in the pandemic were We opened a Shopify store that mirrors the actual inventory of the store,
Mm-hmm.
so people can buy things online, whether it be people who want to swing by for curbside pickup, or people are finding us from all over the country, which is great, but not what we expected. We opened it just to specifically be able to sell things to people while there was a pandemic and the store was closed, but the store is open and it's still doing decent, which is great. But at the same time, we finally got onto Diamond's pull box system, which is a way that subscribers have 24-hour access to their subscriptions and have access to everything in Diamond's system. And that is helping the more adventurous subscribers that we have just go through and find things, old things, books that have been out for years, things we don't carry, like, shot glasses or coaster sets. It's things like that will show up in the subscriber request list. I'm like, man, this is stuff we'd never carry it, and they're finding it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's also letting people have a lot more control over the variant covers they want to get, which is great for us because we don't like ordering them to begin with.
Right.
So when people just ahead of time pre-order it themselves, it makes life a little bit easier. There were a lot of technical problems and issues in this program. This Diamond Pull Box program is still in beta, so it's not the official version. So there's a lot of growing pains, and due to the pandemic, everybody in almost every industry is working at reduced capacity. Warehouses have a lot less staff. Tech companies have a lot less programmers and things like that. So even Diamond now is down to one single programmer and a couple of technicians. So when you find an error, if they can repeat it on their end, then it goes to the programmer to fix. If they can't repeat it, then it means it's a problem with your system specifically.
Mm-hmm.
Then they have to dig through and try to help you out and figure out what it is. But they've been as responsive as they can be with reduced staff to fixing these errors and getting things running. But literally every time something is fixed, it breaks something new.
The nature of things of that sort.
Yeah, but the majority of the problems of everything being broken is because DC left Diamond, and it is very difficult for subscribers to be able to have access to DC product using Diamond tools. And let's face it, that's what we use. We use Diamond tools to do all of our ordering.
Right.
And I mean,
not anymore, I guess.
Specifically, well, but we do, because we still need to go into our Diamond-based point of sale system to look at what we've sold for those DC books, because Lunar doesn't chart your sales. Lunar just charts what you bought.
Right.
We still need to bounce back and forth from the Lunar website to our Diamond inventory service to see what numbers have sold, and then input the numbers. Like, you could input all the numbers through Diamond and then export it as an Excel spreadsheet and then upload that to Lunar. There have been too many problems with that, so I just do it through Diamond and then copy everything over by hand, which doesn't take that much extra time. But the problem is there's often the two different ordering systems don't have everything in the same order. Like, Lunar will have a couple of extra books in their order form that Diamond never had, kind of deal.
Mm-hmm.
So it's definitely a thing you gotta keep your eyes on. And this is a thing you've heard, I think, every retailer you've talked to mention, that we're doing 2 to 3 times more work for no extra money.
Yeah.
And it's taking so much extra effort to sell the same kinds of things, and just maintaining the web store, and just literally, we are not designed as a mail order company. So the man hours it takes to pull an order, pack an order, and ship an order, we don't charge handling fees. We're just charging you what the USPS, the U.S. Postal Service, charges us.
Mm-hmm.
So, you're paying postage rates. So that comes out of our end as far as the effort it takes to package that. But we don't want to overcharge you. We don't want to say, oh, you have to pay an extra $1 for this book because it took me 10 minutes to process it or whatever. Who wants to pay for that?
Nobody.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that is something I've heard a number of times. At the same time, it's just like, if your other option is it not requiring more work, but you being down like 50 or 60% or something like that. I mean, it's just like that's the 2020 or one of the mini curses of 2020 was basically that like you had to do just, I mean, like even for my job, like working from home and stuff like that, for my job, it required a lot more work and a lot of change and everything like that. But it's just like, you and Dal, I'm sure, had to do a lot of things that you never expected you had to do, but then you did it. And, honestly, it's like something like a Shopify store or like, whatever type of online store you have. I feel like one of the common things that I've been hearing from shops is the ones who did the worst didn't have an online presence. And the ones that did better, from I would say somewhere between down a bit to up, are the ones who had online presences. And it's because, like, I don't know. I mean, like, one of the things I'm curious about is like how often you were open to customers, because I know like somebody like Eitan Manhoff at Cape and Cowl Comics in Oakland, hasn't been open since March, I want to say. And has only been doing online orders basically, and he's doing really well with it. And he uses Comic Hub, and that's worked for him. I know that doesn't necessarily work for you guys, but it's worked for him. And it is interesting that without that online mechanic, you lose discoverability. You lose the ability to go on and find those shot classes, or find like Giga or whatever you want to say, how you pronounce it, from Vault, or like other books like that. And I imagine like having that online store and also having that pull box system allowed customers, even when you were closed, to be able to find things that they want to buy beyond just the fundamentals of their pull list.
Yeah, definitely the case. The majority of our pull box orders come in the middle of the night. So that is obviously when people have the most time on their hands. And
are we talking like 2 a.m, or are we talking about like 9:00?
Well, I mean, they're collated and sent to us like every day at 10 p.m. We get an update of like all the orders for the day, just to make it easier. But you can tell that they're done like between midnight and 2 a.m. kind of thing.
Sure.
For a lot of them.
Mm-hmm.
Like literally it's just when people have a chance to unwind from the day and take a deep dive into the system, and the kind of thing that I'm sure I would do if I was just a regular customer.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what else can I get? Let me just I admit I used to go to other websites. Like I would go to eBay and type in Grimjack. Let me see what I can get.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't want the comics. What else is there?
Yeah.
What Grimjack stuff have I not gotten? That kind of thing.
I ordered a Harley Quinn for like the Harley Quinn HBO Max series. I ordered a coffee mug that I saw Kevin Church tweet about, and it's a Bane one, and it says "Caffeine is my vengeance." Wait, I think it's "Caffeine is my vengeance." But anyways, yeah. So I'm totally right there with you. But I don't know. I mean, I do think it's interesting how those online stores, even if you said it was basically decent for you guys, right? It wasn't like lighting the world on fire. I mean, I do feel like it's like, not having an online store almost to a certain degree is like for restaurants that just didn't commit to doing like, either takeout or delivery or something like that. It's just like, you kind of need it during this weird time where there's two things that happen. A, you had to be closed for X amount of time, or B, some people just don't feel comfortable coming into the store anymore, I'm sure. And they
and that's exactly it. We never wanted to have an online presence because we wanted people to get the experience in the store. But once it became, oh no, they can't come in, it's like, all right, we have to change this.
Right.
And honestly, we wouldn't have been able to do it without Diamond rushing their Shopify patch over, because we looked into Shopify as a storefront by itself, and to populate it with the number of SKUs that we have, each individual issue of a comic is a different SKU. It's a different item number. So to put those all in by hand would have been not worth the effort. But what Diamond has is a patch that basically lets you mirror your inventory. You tell Shopify what you have, and Shopify pulls the data from Diamond's server. So product information, cover images, descriptions, and pricing all comes through Diamond server based off of what you have in your stock.
That's nice.
It's not infallible. Like oftentimes Shopify is looking for descriptions in the wrong field, and that requires change. Like you got to get a tech involved to change where it's looking, kind of thing. And then there's also a third-party application called Octopus we had to get, which keeps them talking to each other real time during the day. So when you sell something online, it's removed from the store inventory and vice versa, kind of deal. Otherwise, it would have been just like, oh, anything you sell in the store, you have to make a list of and pull out of online inventory at the end of the day, and that's untenable. So it's not without extra labor, but the idea of having it now, and we have regular customers now who just buy from that website, and when people just email and say, hey, do you have these books? It's a great way to nudge them toward that website, because you can say, hey, look, here, you're looking for Guardians of the Galaxy? Here we go. Here's a search for Guardians of the Galaxy on the website. So you do the search for them, but then give them the results and then just say, and you can do that from now on for anything you're looking for. So it definitely helps people. You know, you have to hold their hand in some capacity, but fine. I don't mind doing that.
Yeah.
That's literally what we do in the store every day.
Yo, everybody. I want to take a quick second to give a shout out to my friends at Bad Idea. You may have heard of this experimental new comic book publisher. They're the crew that's debuting in select comic shops worldwide on March 3rd, 2021 with Matt Kindt and Doug Braithwaite's ENIAC #1. And they're doing so a little bit differently than their peers. First, each issue is oversized and ad-free. Second, each issue comes with a bonus B-side story, giving readers a little something extra with each issue. Lastly, and this is the wild part, so listen up, they don't publish variants, trades, or digital versions of their comics, so if you want one or all of them, you better get to the Bad Idea retailer near you and be there on a Wednesday. Don't have one near you? Pre-order online or explore your options for mail order at badideacorp.com to make sure you don't miss out on ENIAC or upcoming titles from creators like Zeb Wells, David LaFuente, Marguerite Bennett, and many more. And now, back to the show. I'm doing my retailer year in review piece right now, and I sent you the questions, everything, and one of them.
Oh, I know.
No, I wasn't like this isn't a reminder or anything, but I was just thinking, you know, I'm asking people like, are any of these tactics like, you know, Shopify or like delivery or whatever, are those things you're going to be carrying on forward? But the thing is like a lot of that isn't really decided by you in a way. It's like you keep the ones going that customers glommed onto.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, if nobody started using that Shopify, it'd be like, no harm, no foul. We'll just kill it. I'm not going to keep doing it.
Right. Yeah. That's the thing. If when the pandemic is over, everybody is vaccinated, no one's worried about being in public. If people still buy things online, we'll keep the store. If they don't, it's not cost effective because, of course, that comes with monthly fees,
right?
You know, for running it and things like that. And still, like there's a lot of maintenance every week. And one of the things we do is we don't put up the new releases until Sunday on the website because we still want to prioritize the in-store shopping experience.
Sure. And
we also don't want to make our Wednesdays full of running to the shelf to get this new release, running back to the shelf to get this new release. Like we'll wait, you know, four days or so and then put it online.
Mm-hmm. So, you know, we talked about the Shopify, we talked about Pullbox, but were there any other new tactics you took on this year? And like, what was the level of success with any of those?
I mean, we did delivery when the city was shut down. And honestly, it was actually pretty fun driving around the city with Dal dropping off books. But we can't do that when the store is open.
Right.
We could only do that when the store was closed. I answered this question on your the questions form that you sent, but I can't remember. There were.
Well, I remember you guys were doing the thing where you had the was it the Cards Against Humanity people have a store near you, and you were doing like the they could pick up.
Yeah. So, in a world where we keep finding more and more comics creators who wind up not being the best of people.
Oh no.
It turns out that similar situation happened for the main owner of that. That game cafe that they had opened.
Oh no.
And Um, well, basically, we stopped doing like what you're referring to is while we were closed and we had reduced hours at the store, like we weren't because the store was closed for business, we weren't advertising specific hours we would be there. We were just there if we were there and we were there, and then we'd leave when we wanted to, kind of thing. So for people that didn't want to risk coming to do curbside pickup and finding that we're closed, we had the option with the Chicago Game Cafe that was up the street from us. They had a takeout window that was open in the evenings for food, and they would let us drop off our books there, so people could go to that restaurant and pick up their comics. They had to literally say as they were buying their books, like checkout an option was pick up at Chicago Game Cafe.
Mm-hmm.
We stopped doing that once the store reopened. It was when we had specific dedicated hours again. But then that Game Cafe went away.
Yeah.
But it's back now because there's a national chain, I guess, called Snakes and Lattes,
Sure.
which is a chain of game cafes, and they bought it. So it's now Snakes and Lattes, but their main emphasis was a coffee shop that is a game cafe. But this is an extremely crowded corner for coffee shops.
Yeah.
We have a Dunkin' Donuts in the area. We have McDonald's across the street. Dark Matter, which is a major Chicago roaster, they have one of their locations across the street. We have a Starbucks less than 100 yards away. We have two other smaller coffee shops on that same block area, and then a very popular one in the city called Wormhole, which was an 80s themed cafe, now has a 90s themed one in the same building that Snakes and Lattes is in.
Mm.
So it's a coffee shop, David. So that's exciting and new. But I think that because they're a national chain, they have the money to wait this out, and I think they have bigger plans for when they can reopen. And we did have a curated spinner rack of graphic novels that we put there,
Mm-hmm.
and the new people, the new owners we're working with them still, so they do have things there. But obviously they're not selling any of them because people can't go in.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was a thing we did when we had the option. Yes.
Yeah. Well, we talked about like how there was a huge influx of interest from like the single issue readers, and you said that basically kept up for like the latter half of the year. But one thing I'm interested in is, was that primarily the same customers buying more, or was that more customers also?
It's an interesting mix of both. Like the Wednesday sales that went up so much, it was mainly the same people spending more money.
Mm-hmm.
And also more people coming in on Wednesdays because they work from home and they don't have the same restrictions they had during the week.
Sure.
Or like we're still to this day now massively busy right at open. And we never used to be a store that was busy at open. We'd get busy by the end of the day. Now the hours of 5 to 7, nobody comes in because, they're not commuting on their way home from work. They've been home. They've been home the whole time. So they immediately look to get out of the house earlier in the day. So we're a lot busier earlier. And I think people that used to specifically come later in the week are now coming on Wednesdays as well because it's more convenient for them.
Mm-hmm.
So that accounts to it. But the interesting thing that we found, especially with the web store, most of the web store sales that we're getting are people we don't know.
Yeah.
And people that are just finding us through that. And a lot of them are in Chicago, which is great. And if you look at, like Brian Hibbs, we love doing the 100 best sellers of graphic novels and single issue comics. And those are both up on challengerscomics.com right now. And the amazing thing about the graphic novel sales is that the majority of the best sellers are your classic mainstays, Saga Volume 1, Monstrous Volume 1. It's a lot of things that Gideon Falls Volume 1, things that have been out for a long time that people are just discovering because they wanted to do pandemic binges. And what's also really interesting to us is that not dollar amount, but if you look at, we rack our graphic novels by genre. So,
Mhm.
superhero, horror, sci-fi, fantasy, action, drama, things like that. If you look at the percentages in sales between 2019 and 2020, the categories stay remarkably similar. The percentages aren't differing. Like we're still selling the same amount of sci-fi books. We're still selling the same amount of superhero books percentage wise. And I thought that those numbers would be all over the place with people finding new things, but they're finding the new same things, I guess, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's like you're getting these new people online, but they're gravitating to the same things as existing customers in equal measure, which is
Yeah.
seems extremely improbable statistically speaking, but I mean, I guess it kind of makes sense because it's like I mean, I think a huge part of what ends up selling in comics, especially for new readers, is word of mouth and like what
Yeah.
articles saying like, oh, you should read this new X-Men stuff, or you should read Gideon Falls because it's finishing, or this or that. I gotta say, I'm looking at your list right now. Wolverine number 6 being number 3 on your list is blowing my mind right now. And I know that was a Ten of Swords comic, but
Yep.
it's a very random one.
I know.
It's weird.
That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. I mean, that's the first one too. That's the oh wait, that's the one where they had like Solemn show up, and all of a sudden people are like, I gotta get it. I gotta get this first appearance of this new adversary for Wolverine.
But wait, didn't he show up in X-Force first?
Maybe. Wait, was maybe. I might be mixing it up. I know he was in Wolverine that Wolverine
Yeah.
issue, and also X Force.
Yes.
Although apparently you are a big Wolverine store because Wolverine number 1 was number 9. So,
Yeah.
I don't know. I find that to be really interesting. It's a very random comic to be number 3, but well, okay. So one thing that I talked to a number of shops over the year about was some like for you guys club members, for others pull list customers were just disappearing. They just like were gone, and understandably, it's just like
Yeah. Yeah.
it was we're in a pandemic. They weren't going out buying stuff. Maybe they lost their job. Maybe this. Maybe that. Did you see that?
We did. One of the things we did going back to Blue was when we opened Blue, we had a handful of a dozen or so customers transfer to that store. So, like existing subscribers from the Bucktown store transferred to River North.
Right.
So when Blue closed, we didn't know it was closing. So we kept everybody active. And then once we realized, okay, this store is not reopening, we transferred everybody back over or into the Bucktown store, and then emailed them and said, hey, if you don't want your books anymore, that's fine. If you do want them, they're going to be at this new store. So we lost a few people who didn't want to transfer the stores, but we kept way more of the organic Blue Club members than I would have expected. And because the stores are like 4 miles apart.
Mm-hmm.
So the people that are making this extra long trip, like there were people that lived right by that store who are now commuting to this store to get their books, which is kind of amazing that people would do that because there's other stores they could get to. So like the fact that they still shop with us is really amazing and kind of humbling.
Mm-hmm.
And there are just people that over the course of the pandemic, it gets too much and they have to go. That's fine. We're not losing any more people.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think like there's a regular amount of attrition, and I don't have a percentage of it, but we call subscribers that don't come in like a month and a half period delinquents.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll do a round of delinquent phone calls, we'll do a round of delinquent emails, and then give them a few more weeks. Well, with the pandemic, we told everybody we're not kicking anybody out of club during the city shutdown. It's not fair. You can't get your books. We'll offer to. Here's a new thing we started doing to backtrack for a second. We never used to do online invoicing, but now we do if somebody wants it.
Oh, really? They can pay online or something?
Yeah, using Square, who is our credit card processor. They have an invoicing service. So if anybody says, hey, invoice me for my books, whether they want them shipped or whether they want them held here, they'll pay for them in advance, or not in advance. So they'll pay for them. And so they'll say, send me an invoice. And so we'll invoice them. And so that's a system we'll keep doing when this is all over.
I like that.
And I know there's plenty of stores that like our closest competitor is a store that automatically charges every subscriber for their books every Wednesday. So they don't care if people come in because those books are already paid for no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a level of bookkeeping that we're not capable of.
Also seems like a really good way to make people really mad at you during a pandemic.
Yeah, you would think that for sure. But I think a lot like that's how they're doing well in the pandemic because they don't need people to be able to come in. And they're a store that actually like they've barely reopened or have really few open hours.
Man, I feel like I would not be a very happy customer there. I mean, to each their own and everything, but it's just like if I was a regular at a restaurant and like, oh, that's obviously different. You're not constantly having Eggs Benedict come in for me each week,
Right.
So that's a slightly different animal. But it just feels a little.
Benedict goes really good.
Ooh, man. I almost had some this morning. I will say, in terms of being delinquent, I had like I am a Wednesday warrior, a relentless Wednesday warrior. I actually went in on a Thursday this week, or not this week, but recently, and it was really weird. It was actually because I wasn't working and I completely lost track of days, and I was like, "What day is today?"
Oh, it was your staycation.
What's that?
You were on your staycation.
I kind of had two staycations. I was off for most of November, and then I was off between Christmas and New Year's. And I was gone. I was off from the 24th until the 4th, and so I kind of just lost track of time. And I was like, "Wait, what day is it?" And I was like, "I guess I'm going in to get comics on Thursday." And thankfully, speculators did not buy all of my comics.
Nice.
Okay, well, I want to go over a few specifics from the year in terms of varying things that happened. And I want to start. I was looking over your graphic novel list too. I dig that Firepower was number one. I mean, I don't know why Firepower was number one, but it's Kirkman and Somni. But at the same time, that's actually a way I don't feel like people talk about that book, and it's a lot of fun. Very fun book.
Yeah, honestly, the single issue sales aren't what we would want them to be. They're good, but they're not nowhere near Walking Dead. And no offense to Charlie Adler, Chris Somni I think has more dynamic art style.
Yeah,
and is more suitable to your general reader.
But the prologue connected. I mean, I wonder if it's the price point. I don't know what it is, but either way, great book. But I am interested in, and this is again something spoiling your answers on the questions I sent you. But that's fine. Did you find any shifts in terms of like format for customers? Like, because one thing I found that I heard from like some shops. And obviously this was very polarizing depending on the shop, but like some shops found more customers going towards graphic novels because you're buying in chunks. You have more casual people who are coming in, like you said, buying Saga Volume 1, buying Gideon Falls Volume 1, Paper Girls Volume 1, et cetera, et cetera. Or did you see was there a shift in format at all, like towards single issues, towards graphic novels, anything like that?
The regular Challengers customers didn't change their formats. The people that were like the website is 80% graphic novels, maybe even higher than 80%, honestly. The new readers, the people that were pandemic stocking up, obviously are graphic novels. But traditionally, the people that just buy singles just bought singles. People that just buy graphic novels still just buy graphic novels. And the people that buy both still bought both. So I didn't find anybody changing formats, but we did sell way more graphic novels in the pandemic. I mean, I feel like we need better terms for when the city was shut down, right, when we reopened, or like the now time.
Right, exactly. Because it is kind of like mini eras within a year. Because and it also depends on each place. Because you look at our pals over at Big Bang Comics, they're on third or fourth lockdown. I want to say fourth lockdown. Third?
Yeah, definitely. England's on their third. I don't know if Ireland had any more. I do listen to a tremendous amount of BBC radio. That's where I get all my pop music and my British news from. But obviously, Ireland is not London, and they all have different, Wales and Scotland and whatnot all have their different lockdown rules. So it may be their fourth. It's at least their third.
Yeah,
definitely their third, if not more. And I feel so bad for them because they have all the issues currently with Brexit, and they cannot get their product from the UK.
It's such a nightmare. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. I mean, I was talking to them about it yesterday, but I mean, it is actually, I do want to bring it back to something you'd said earlier. You said you had people showing up in Chicago that had never ordered from you before. They actually had the same thing at Big Bang, if I remember correctly. Like, they were telling me that people in Ireland that they'd never met before were just like ordering on their shop, and they were just doing mail order now, and they were just bewildered by this random appearance of these customers. But I mean, but what I was getting to though is like, when you're saying like we want to talk about how like the shutdown was different than the normal time versus now and everything like that, like some of the places like like them, like being locked down 3 or 4 times, and then being like from according to John, basically they were like hot fire every time they were actually open. It's just basically like either going 200 miles per hour or basically limping along. And it's just, I mean, that's one of the tricky parts of all this is like the unpredictability of it.
Yeah, and all we want is a happy medium in between.
Right. Well, speaking of happy mediums in between, or the lack thereof, I don't want to talk about the distribution part of this because, you already kind of addressed it a bit, but I'm very interested in how things were going for you at DC. Like, I know Three Jokers was 3 of the 4 top spots for you for your bestsellers for single issues, but what did you see out of DC this year? Like, were things going well? Were they going better? What was the year like for them?
DC for us, especially the last couple of years, their event books do great for us. Their regular monthly titles are very low sellers for us. Even right now, we are hemorrhaging Batman numbers. Like, people are just flocking off that book.
Interesting.
To like, there was a point where years and years ago, in the Scott Snyder days of Batman, we were racing subscribers between Saga and Batman to see who would break 100 subscribers first.
Mm-hmm.
Batman never hit it, and Saga crushed it.
Right.
And then Batman trickled down, and then Tom King came on, and Batman scooted up some more. And then by the end of Tom King, Batman's numbers were down. And then James Tynion came in, and then his stuff was just skyrocketing with all of the new appearances of Punchline and all the new villains and whatnot. But now people are tired of that and are just flocking off that book, which it hasn't decreased, in my opinion, in quality at all. They're just not buying it anymore. I guess and obviously that stops as of this week because we're now focusing on Future State. But
right.
If you look at like the Dark Multiverse stuff, the Tales in the Dark Multiverse do fine for us, but Death Metal did really well. But most of the Death Metal, like, Speed Metal or Trinity Crisis or Multiverse's End, which we ordered more of because Captain Carrot was in it, those just did not move for us at all. And you did have people saying, I wanted this 7-part story. Why are there 30 some odd crossovers?
Yeah.
Because you bought them last time. That's why. You
mean like that they were in their pull list?
I mean, because for metal. I mean,
okay, right.
The first time around. Yeah. That's why DC made more of them.
Yeah.
But our Superman numbers are back to what they were before Bendis came on. Even Morrison's Green Lantern have fallen to half of what they were when it started. We can't our Flash numbers are in the teens. That's a low number. Aquaman was this is Kelly Sue regardless, 3 for the shelf after subscribers.
Wowza.
That's it.
Wowza.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it is, DC's always felt completely top heavy. And it's really interesting. I don't know. I mean, I remember, I think last year Dowell told me that Black Label was really good for you guys. Did that maintain?
And it still is. And everything, so long as it's not Joker Harley, everything Black Label does really well for us.
But not Joker Harley.
No, it does okay.
Interesting, because I always thought that was they're hanging their hat because they loved publishing stuff with Joker and Harley. That was the bulk of the beginning of Black Label.
I think the fact that it's a 9-part bi-monthly series hurt it.
You're talking about the specific Joker Harley book.
Yes, exactly.
Oh, okay,
yeah.
Okay, sure.
But also the Harley Quinn series, the Palmiotti Connor written Harley Quinn Black Label book. It died real quick for us as well.
Yeah.
But I mean, Dead Earth did phenomenal. But of course, Daniel Warren Johnson is a local guy. Smile Killer and Killer Smile, those did well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Hellblazer Rise and Fall. 1 did great. 2 is
It's a good book though.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, anything Tom Taylor touches is gold.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think. Man, Endless Winter was a huge dog though. If I could just throw that in there. Like, oh my God, we're stuck with so much.
I like when that was first like kind of announced, I remember just being like, what is this? And then like somebody told me it was out. And I'm like, really? Like I've like heard nothing about it. It's very bizarre. It felt like one of those events that they just like kind of throw in there and hope for the best. And I just like I didn't get that one at all. I mean that's the thing with a lot of DC stuff outside of like I had a really big year for Black Label, particularly Hill House, which is funny because I seem to be the only person. But the outside of like the stuff that's on the periphery, I'm not like reading any DC, and like that's a lot of like the regular stuff that's happening just seems like news to me, which is strange because I'm like literally a person who writes about this stuff, but. Well, okay, just a few more questions on specifics, but okay, you said Ten of Swords was big. Clearly looking at the your top books for the year, X-Men as a whole, like that broader line was very big. Did you see any drop off, or I mean, I imagine there was some, but any real drop off after Ten of Swords ended? Like from maybe where like let's say Excalibur or X-Force or Wolverine were before Ten of Swords?
It seems like they're going back down right away to where they were. Obviously, we ordered a little bit heavier just in case people wanted to carry over.
But they weren't dropping. Were they dropping below the previous numbers?
No.
Oh, okay.
They're just dropping back. Well, like they weren't. We thought there'd be people who wanted to keep going with them, especially Excalibur, because let's face it, Ten of Swords was mainly an Excalibur story. I thought more people would be interested in keeping with that book. But no, they're not dropping any further.
Mm-hmm.
Although people keep asking when Cable's going to come out again.
Yeah, where is Cable? I hadn't thought of that.
It's soon. It's in 2 weeks, I think.
Okay.
I think that's the next one.
I really like Cable. Yeah. It's a fun book.
Well, they took Phil Noto away to do that issue of X-Men.
Yeah. I don't even know who's coming on next, but I did notice that. Phil Noto's been everywhere, though. He also did an Excalibur issue during Ten of Swords. So, I mean, honestly, like...
This is an unrelated story. I'm sorry. It's just a story from conventions past. I used to do the convention scene pretty regularly with the other place I worked at. So I would go to, Pittsburgh and Detroit and Dallas, Fort Worth, and you name a show, I'm sure I was there. But there was a great rivalry between Phil Noto and Fletcher Chufong from DC Comics. And it was all mainly your mom jokes. But there was a point, and I've been a friend of Fletcher's for years. So there was a point where Fletcher got a group of people together and made us all, oh man, I apologize if this isn't fit for the podcast audience, a conversation for this audience, made us all I Nailed Noto's Mom t-shirts.
Oh my God.
And it was a tour, and it was basically every convention date on the back, like it was a band tour shirt.
Oh my God.
And then we were all going to dinner together, so he had us all wear them and told Phil that we were meeting later than we were, so we could all gather first, so he could come into this lobby where we're all wearing these shirts. Man, it was so mean.
You guys are wildly inappropriate.
So mean. Yeah, I still have that shirt to this day.
Of course, you should definitely keep that.
Yeah. And I have a great portrait of Disco Fletch that Phil drew for me at one of those shows.
I like it. Well, okay. Yeah. So one thing that the last couple of years when we've talked that has been a little weird is Christmas was always really good for you, and then it wasn't. Then it just kind of stopped being good. Like people were just disappearing. What did you see this year? Did Christmas pick back up?
It was the same patterns we've seen, where Christmas sales don't really start for us until people realize they can't get things shipped to them on time. And this year, of course, this last season was horrible for shipping. Like I still have 2 Christmas presents that I bought for Dal that haven't shown up yet.
Mm-hmm.
I'm getting notification from people that they're just getting our Christmas card. when we mailed it early December.
Mm-hmm.
Did you get our card?
No.
I definitely mailed a Christmas card to the Harpers.
Well, I am in Alaska, and so I will see it in 2022.
Yeah. So there's definitely that. We have a pretty terrible post office, and somebody had posted a photo of the back of our post office from the outside. And you know, like those giant bins you see that they take laundry away in from prisons and movies?
Yeah.
They had like a dozen of those outside in the parking lot, overflowing with packages. Like each one was piled high with packages because they've filled up the entire storage facility inside the post office, and they just overflowed into the parking lot. And that was all stuff that was in transit.
Yeah.
And it was an eye-opening photo because, of course, everything is just in giant piles. And you think, oh, each one of those is a delicately hand-wrapped gift for a loved one. And here it's just thrown in a giant pile. But I mean, what are you going to do? People are relying on the mail a lot more than ever. There's a lot more restrictions to the post office because of the current political system.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so basically people started shopping from us too late for them.
Right.
When shipping was definitely out the window.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it was the same kind of sales patterns we've seen
Mm-hmm.
in the past. It was fine. It was up from last December, but I equate those numbers more to our massive Wednesday numbers than necessarily holiday shopping.
Yeah.
And as you know, we do a traditional count every December of who didn't come in over the span of the month. And this year, the number was 82 subscribers didn't come in the entire month of December, which is actually lower than it's been the last couple years. So that's something
weird.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, okay. So I have a couple questions from patrons I'll run by you. One is going to be, I think, theoretically easy. Ryan Alcock asks, who is Patrick's favorite patron for Contest of Challengers?
Wow, that's Ryan. That's a pretty great question. We are blessed with the number of people that actually subscribe to or who are patrons of ours, and I fear it is unfair to say to pick a favorite because we have former and temporary current employees who are patrons.
Mm-hmm.
We have longtime friends of mine who are patrons. My brother is a patron.
Oh yeah.
I mean, you know, things like that. So Ryan is great with it's like, I don't know how often you experience this, but with our podcast, oftentimes it's in a vacuum.
Mm-hmm.
Like we don't get a lot of feedback from people. So Ryan is great at responding to things. Mitchell Davies and I talk more than any other. I talk to him more than any other retailer. Mitchell from All Star Comics in Melbourne, Australia. He's a patron, but we talk about comics a lot. Chris Burton, who is a club member of ours, specifically because of the podcast, he is one of the most proactive and informed club members we have. And he's a guy who is definitely dug into the pull box system and is keeping on top of things. And also just like the nicest guy.
Yeah.
So they're all my favorites. Ryan, they're all my favorites.
Just a massive group of co-favorites.
Yeah. I love how many patrons we have that are both of ours, David. How patrons of both of our podcasts.
Yeah. Chris and Ryan.
It's pretty
both
great.
of them.
Yeah. And Jacob Sorelli.
Yep. And Jacob Sorelli. Yep. Also will be featured in my year in review piece, Kamikaze.
Nice.
Another question I got was from Mark Abnett, who actually has a comic coming out in the near future. He was wondering, and this I'm sure could be an entire podcast unto itself, but you know, I'm looking for gut reaction, first thought. What advice would you give an independent comic creator about getting their book on the shelves without a major publisher or diamond?
Okay, the advice is different depending on if it's a single issue book or if it's a graphic novel.
Let's say a 5-issue miniseries for all ages.
Okay, that is a real tough thing to do. There is a creator named Henri Compen who does a book called Yi Soon Shin. People can find it at yisoonshin.com. That's YISOONSHIN.com. And Henri has managed to sell over 100,000 copies of his book by himself, by hustling, selling at shows. He's a very aggressive salesman, but he doesn't uh, like if you say no, he's like, all right, cool. Like he's not.
He doesn't get in your face
I
about it.
guess. Yeah, exactly. Like he's a little in your face to get your attention. But I think that if people go to his website and look, he does blogs and things. He does a really great breakdown of how he does that and how he gets his book out. And he is local to us, and we've done a bunch of signings with him. So we carry his books. It's easier. I think it's a lot easier for us to carry books when somebody comes in and hands it to us. And we definitely have a consignment program where literally anybody can have their books in the store. They're not necessarily on the wall that you would still find Batman on. They're in a separate section. So a lot of stores have a consignment program. But honestly, I'm sorry, you said his name was Mark?
Yep, Mark.
Mark is probably looking for a better answer than you have to hit each store individually. But honestly, it's all the legwork is on your part. It's writing to the stores, sending the information, emailing, acquiring the list of stores. The best thing we can get as a retailer is PDFs of your book.
Mm-hmm.
You show me the book so I can read the first issue and decide if it's a good fit for us. You also need to have a strict marketing plan. Like, it's one thing for you to say, oh, this is a good book for anybody who reads Batman. How are you going to tell people who read Batman about your book? Like, I can't hand sell everything in the store. We need to know what you're doing proactively to get people looking for your book.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it be, I have a Facebook page, I have a YouTube channel, I have Instagram. Fine. What else? What else you're doing? Like, we need to know who your book is for and how you are marketing it to them.
Mm-hmm.
And that will help us in our decision to carry it. Because basically, if you want us to do all the legwork for you, we're not going to do that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that makes total sense. I mean, and that's good because it's like, while it's still just basically like you got to hustle, at least there's some direction to it.
I was just going to say, you're right. This is a much longer topic.
Yeah.
But I hope it points into, and honestly, Down, I talk about this a lot on Contest of Challengers when it comes up.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not saying go listen to all the old episodes, but read the descriptions. There's somewhere literally somebody wrote us a whole bunch of questions about how to do that. And we spent the whole episode answering their questions. I don't remember the episode number off the top of my head, but it exists in the archives.
I like it. Well, I just have two more questions. And one, okay, so this is probably I don't know. This could be incendiary. I don't know. But for me as an outsider, I'm talking to retailers a lot. I pay a lot of attention to this stuff. And I think, and obviously, with pandemic, there's going to be a very diverse mix of approaches. But
yeah.
One of the things that felt weird for me as somebody who pays attention to this stuff is it often felt like there was like a bigger divide in opinion and approach than ever, to the point where it felt like shops were like deliberately confrontational with each other at times. Did it feel like, I know you and Dow had your own stuff going on, and you like bowed out of Comics Pro because you just didn't want to get into all that stuff all the time anymore. But did it feel like that for you too? Like as somebody who is in the field, did it feel like a pretty divisive year for shops?
David, first of all, I love this question. It feels like that all the time, but especially now. You're right. And I always say that, let's say there's 2,500 comic book stores. You can find 2,500 ways to do the same thing, 2,500 different ways to do the same thing, to sell the same comic. Like, everybody has their own opinions, and a lot of comic retailers don't like other retailers saying, well, this is how I do it. Right. And that's honestly how most of the stores talk to each other is, well, no, you should do this. It should be my way. You should do it this way. And we love looking at other stores and how they do things. And we're always looking for a new good idea. And a good idea is a good idea, no matter where it comes from or how it's perceived as far as ownership or whatever. Yeah, I feel that like one of the reasons we joined Comic Show to begin with was for that like-mindedness and for that camaraderie. And now, especially on Facebook, there's even smaller microcosm groups where it's like, oh, we want to be of like-minded, but it's just these 10 stores
Right.
or what have you, because uh, Comics Pro has a hard time being of a similar mind. And we're still Comics Pro members and we're still active, but I stepped off the board years ago, is what I think you were referring to.
Yeah, yeah.
And we're not extremely active in conversations because most of the time it feels more like quarreling than it does active solutions. And oftentimes people want to just vent, which is fine. But then there's other people that say, well, you should do this. This is exactly what you need to do that. And they're like, well, that I solved it. You're done.
Mm-hmm.
No, you're just looking for some compassion, for some sympathy, for someone saying, yeah, man, it's the same here. I hate that.
Yeah.
And then it's also filled with like so many of the things that people ask. And there's many groups online. There's a Final Order Cutoff group, which is way bigger of a Facebook group, I think. And then there's a lot of groups. There's just a lot of groups, and it's impossible to be in all of them. But too often people are asking questions that have already been repeated, or information that's been put out in the Diamond emails. Or I know it's impossible to be on DC's mailing list and Marvel's mailing list and Boom's and Dynamite's and Dark Horses and AWAs and Aftershocks, but all of these companies have their own newsletters, and I subscribe to all of them because I'm trying to do my job better. I can't read them all. There's just too many, and too many of them send out too many each week. Like DC can do up to 3 a week. Like Marvel does 1 a week, and it's barely any new information.
Mm-hmm.
So that's fine. And a lot of stuff is repetitive, but repetition breeds familiarity. So it's helpful. But I think that all those are tools people can use. And I do find it distracting when people are asking questions about a thing that was answered in a Diamond email that day. This is similar to that. I was talking to a fellow retailer about Future State Batman.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my problems with that book is that the whole impetus of the story of Future State Batman #1 is, who is this new Batman? Who is he? Yet we all know who it is because DC told everyone a few months ago who's under the mask.
Right.
Yet the story is, who is this strange new character? And they're really trying to point you into thinking it's this one character when we all know who it is.
I want to point out, I bought it. I have no idea who it is.
Oh, okay. I mean, like this retailer is saying, I don't know who it is. And I said, oh, good for you for not having it spoiled. But in my head, I'm like, you're a retailer. You should know this. DC outright told you in a retailer email, they told you who it is.
Right.
So I'm being cryptic, obviously not to ruin anything.
No.
So, but again,
that.
you can't, and like, I'm not saying any retailer who doesn't know who's under the cowl is a bad retailer. I'm just saying that those tools are there for you.
Yeah.
And theoretically, that helps you do your job better.
Yeah. I mean, it just kind of felt like, to a certain degree, I would see some people like getting very mad online, and there would be things like, do you remember, did you see Guardians of the Galaxy?
Yeah.
You remember the part where, like they're all in the circle and they're like talking about the plan, like 12% of the plan and everything like that.
Yeah.
And like Drax is saying, we just saved you. And like, Star-Lord's basically just like, no, we just went over that. Like, you were not saving me. You were trying to kill me, basically. And then Drax is like, when did we go over that? And he says, just now. He's like, I wasn't listening. I kind of feel like that conversation felt like a microcosm for a lot of the conversations I heard this year in comics retail. And it was just really weird. And I do think you're right. I mean, like, that's an underrated part about the comics retail world, is a lot of people look at comic shops and they're like, they're all comic shops. But like, a lot of the shops I talk to, it's like I talk to you and I talk to Big Bang and I talk to like like Brennan Schatz at Variant Edition, and I talked to like Eitan Manhoff and at Cape and Cal, and Books with Pictures, Katie Proctor, et cetera, all these different groups, and you all are fairly similar. Like there's like you kind of have like the bookstore vibe, and you know a lot about it, and you're very passionate, and you have all these like progressive approaches and everything like that. But not everyone's like that, and it's really just pockets. But it was just weird because a lot of the year it felt like the pockets were lobbing grenades at each other, and it was very strange to watch from the outside.
Yeah, and that's part of the industry as a whole. And I will never tell you, David. Let's say you open David Harper's Comics in Anchorage, Alaska. Your dream store is open. I am never going to tell you, hey, David, this is what you should do. All I'll tell you is what I do, and I'll tell you what works for me. And that's all we can ever do. And I don't claim to know your clientele or your business. And I may say, oh, I wouldn't do that if I were you, but I'm never going to tell you not to. Like it's not my place to tell you how to run your business. But I think that because so many comic shop owners don't have a business background, and because they're figuring it out as they go along, you take more pride in your successes and you get more defensive on your failures. And you see criticism or advice as an attack.
Sure.
And it is, I think it's human nature to lash out before accepting help. So it's not surprising. And I'm sure it's the same in every industry.
Oh yeah,
it's
totally.
our industry. It's the one we know the best. I think that there are definitely retailers I know who are way more willing to throw stones than to open the door of their glass house.
Yeah. It just felt a little weird to me on the outside, even relative to like the previous years where I've kind of done this stuff. But let's close with a happy note. I want to close like with 2021, looking forward ish, because it's, what is it, January 9th? But still, like, what are your hopes for 2021? Like, if obviously, like, I guess realistic hopes. I'm not going to say like you're going to have
I want the vaccine or things like that. Like, let's say, my hopes are going to be juxtaposed on a world that already has the vaccine under control and people are buying books again. We're considering that as the baseline for where we're moving forward from here. I hope that more and more stores are looking at other outlets for getting their books. You may have noticed that our number 3 best-selling graphic novel was a book called Come Home Indio.
Yeah.
And it is a book that we couldn't get through Diamond. We had to get through alternate means. And it's a graphic novel. It's about a Native American creator growing up, not understanding what his Native American heritage is. It's your standard coming of age story, but it's really well done. And it resonated with a lot of people. And it's our number 1 selling drama book for the year. And it's number 3 on our list for the year. And I bet you there are many, many, many comic stores that have never heard of it.
Yeah.
So my hope is that we can keep finding books like that. Now, we didn't discover this book. This wasn't a thing that we found. It was a book that was pointed out to us. And we're lucky that we have people that still look for things and say, hey, can you get this? And then we look at it and go, oh, man, we definitely want to have this. So I want surprises like that for this year. I want to have, because I didn't know of earlier, I didn't know about Come Home Indio in 2019. I found out about it early 2020. And then it came out in September, October, I think like late September, and did that well for us. So I want those surprises to still be there. The comics industry is still full of joy and wonder, and there are new things I'm reading and finding every day, and that's why I love it so much. Just today, I read while working. Do you know Sarah Scribbles? Sarah Anderson's. Sarah Anderson is a creator who does just like you've seen these on the internet, I'm sure, of this frumpy woman in a black and white striped shirt, black and white cartoons, and just like single panel life strips.
Mm-hmm.
And they're really funny. She's had 3 or 4 collections. They all have like a neon color felt on the cover. Well, she just had a hardcover graphic novel come out called Fangs, and it is about a vampire.
I got that.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
so I read that today, and it's super fun.
Yeah.
It's a book about a vampire dating a werewolf. You know, I mean, what else do you want out of comics? I ask you.
Yeah.
I want that level of novelty and wonder, and I still want to find things. Obviously, I hope sales go up. I hope that more and more people realize that the medium of comics is still viable and a thing that they want to be part of. I want Saga to come back.
Yeah.
I think this is our year, David.
It's coming.
I think Saga is coming back. Yeah, I know it's being worked on. I feel like we're getting an announcement. Like, I feel like it won't be the first half of the year.
My money's on
May.
May.
I think we'll have. You think so? Like,
my money's
for
on May.
The announcement or the actual?
No, it's coming.
Issue in
that's
your
my.
hand?
That's my. I don't have any inside information. Wow. That's my money.
Okay.
I'm putting it.
I don't believe you. I think you do have insider information.
I wouldn't be saying it if I had inside information, because then I'd be selling out a source.
Oh no, I don't think you would tell us, but I think you haven't. I think you're deliberately putting us off the trail.
Mm-hmm.
Back before, when Jeff Stang was still working at Image, before he moved to Lunar, he had done a couple of retailer check-ins with us over the during the pandemic, and the very first thing he said is, "Please don't ask about Saga. You don't know."
Yeah.
And Dow's like, "We were not going to ask you, David. We know better."
Yeah.
We're not gonna. Yeah. Yeah. So, there's not specific projects I can point to that I'm excited for, because I honestly don't have. I haven't even read the new previews that's for March shipping product.
Mm-hmm.
So I know. Thanks to emails like Ed Brubaker's or Jeff Lemire's, I know. God, Jeff Lemire has so much stuff coming.
Oh my God, it's unbelievable. Yeah, I wrote about that this week in my my 10 Things column, where I was just like, I love the juxtaposition between him being like, I'm gonna take it easy, and then here's 5,000 things I'm working on.
Yeah, here's everything I've already written that won't come out until 2021, 2022.
Yeah.
I'm excited for Black Hammer Reborn. I love the Black Hammer verse.
Yeah.
This is the best time for comics we've ever had. And sure, there's more bad comics than ever before, but the good ones are so good. And the back half of the year, it was so great to be able to look ahead and just things like I Walk with Monsters to get excited about, or Department of Truth is in my opinion excellent, or Origins, or We Live, like under the radar books that are great. We're maybe Kaiju Max wraps up next year or this year. I don't know. Maybe that's great. Like there's frequently long periods of time where I can't find a book to hype to people.
Mm-hmm.
But that, like, recently I found like there was a deluge of them.
Yeah.
And I want that.
I totally agree. I mean, honestly, like, I think a lot of retailers are going to like have, similar problems to what they had last year. But the thing that's really heartening is that I think there's more good product than ever to sell. And I think that's always a good position to at least start from. But Patrick, that is all I have for you. Thank you so much for coming on to talk about the year for Challengers, the challenges of Challengers, the good of Challengers, and all of that. So thank you for coming on.
Always a pleasure, David. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Off Panel with retailer Patrick Brower. You can find Patrick on his shop's Twitter at @Challengers, on Instagram at @GoChallengersGo, and in his shop, Challengers Comics and Conversation in Chicago. Love Off Panel and want to support it? Subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts today and give the show a rating or review while you're at it, but 5 stars only. You can also support the show by backing it on Patreon. Find the show at patreon.com/offpanel. And when you back it on there, you get early access to each week's podcast, as well as weekly content and more. Want even more? Subscribe to my subscription comic site Sketched at sketch.com for long-form articles, interviews, and the rest of the site's content and its members-only forum. You can find Off Panel and Sketched on social media by liking it on Facebook at /Sketched. That's SKTCHD. Follow on Twitter and Instagram at @SketchComic, or following me at @SliceFriedGold. Big thanks to all my existing patrons, including Megan Marsden, Brandon DePillis, Patrick Brower, Declan Shalby, Dan Garino, Josh Williamson, Adam Freeman, Ben Wild, Brian Klein Q, SB, Antonio Offen, Nick Bennett, Daniel Whitfield, Scotty Young, Susanna Polo, Jeff Weira, Reed Hinkley Barnes, Mario Tiambang, AbductedTheComic.com, Andrew Carita, Matt Mahoney, Charlie Chu, Stefan Hall, Pensacola Pop Comics, Kim Esslin, Philip Myra, Christian Shelton, Kenny Porter, Chris Pacella, Torrin Groombeck, Fuzz Bubbles, Christopher Todd, Transmitter Down, Waltz Comics and Books, Carl Mizell, Danny Ollie, Paul Slates, Akil Wilson, Alex Dimitriopoulos, Terry Dodson, Liana Kangas, Keegan Ray, Wesley Giff, Sean Kirkham, Alistair Ross, Julio Anta, Brett A. Schmidt, Jason Goodmanson, Paul Ryanwad, Vita Ayala, Tara Ferguson, Dave Slusher, WMQ Comics, Akil Kokachi, Phil White, Sean Pinello, Ken Heidelman, Philip Seavey, Al Ewing, Ryan Alcock, David Kelly, Rob Wilson IV, Nick Polito, Odin McCready, Brandon Fletcher, Gary Maloney, Jonathan Nilsson, Matthew Groom, Jason Massey, Adam Bogart, Matthew Taylor, Nick Patera, Jacob Sorelli, Ford Gilmore, Dave Baraldi, Nick Hall, Bjorn Basin, John Hendricks, Steve Anderson, Ian Maxwell, Cliff Chang, Benjamin Shipper, Colin McMahon, Chris Palmer, Scott McGovern, Nathan Fairbairn, Kat McKenzie, Adam Highfield, Fiona Staples, Chris Halloran, Mark Abnett, Mike Murphy, Michael Shirley, Tom Barnett, Jim Demonakos, Norbert, Nick Lowe, James Kaplan, and Mission Comics and Art San Francisco. You guys are all the best. Quick thanks to Upright T-Rex Music, who wrote and performed Off Panel's theme song just for the show. Check out their music on Spotify because it's completely delightful. Thanks for listening, and tune in next week for another episode.